Hey guys, what's up? Nick here once again, and this is the video I think everybody, including myself, has been very much looking forward to. We are going to be doing our full Twisted Metal Black tier list. So let's get right to it. So if you're new to my tier list videos, I've already done Twisted Metals 1 through 4, and then after Twisted Metal Black here, we're going to be doing Twisted Metal Small Brawl, and then Head On. And then from that point on, we're actually going to be doing the Twisted Metal PS3 version, mainly because we got so many people in the comment section asking for it, so we're going to be delivering. But with that being said, we're going to jump right into it. We are going to be starting from left to right here with Brimstone. Now, one thing that is different about Twisted Metal Black compared to any other Twisted Metal out there is their stats are actually not ranked by stars or by levels. They are ranked essentially by little graphs, so I'm going to rank it as a percentage more than a 3 out of 5 or a 4 out of 5 kind of, so to speak. And when we're looking at Brimstone's stats, his special is rated at a 60%, his speed is around 80%, his handling is almost 100%, and his armor is about 50%. I have to agree with most of these stats, to be honest with you, and from playing Brimstone, he is one of the most unique characters, and I am going to say right off the bat, I'm not going to be ranking these vehicles at all based on the character behind the wheel, mainly because every character in Twisted Metal Black has an amazing backstory, and it just would be way too hard to rank them based on their decisions and their stories and stuff like that. So we're ranking this literally just like I've done with the previous tier list on how the vehicle handles, the design of the vehicle, the special weapon, and just how fun they are to play in general. And of course, this is my list, and my opinion does not matter. So if you don't agree with me, no worries whatsoever. Please put your list in the comment section below. And coming back to Brimstone, I've never been a huge fan of him, playing as him, I should say. I do like the design of his vehicle. It looks like a El Camino type vehicle. It's got the long pickup bed, and you got the moving body in the back, which looks really grotesque and it's unique. But his special weapon has always been super mediocre to me. It's very difficult at times to aim it correctly. It does home in on the enemy a little bit, but not very much. But even when you do get a direct hit with it and the body of the person that says repent and he blows up, it doesn't do much damage. It does maybe 10%, if that, of the damage of the character. So yeah, his special weapon, even though it is rated at about 60%, I honestly would rate it at a 30% at the most. However, he is a very fast vehicle, and he's got good handling, so he is fun to drive around, but his armor is a little bit less to be desired. So yeah, in general, I'm probably going to put Brimstone in a C tier, and I'm going to be pretty critical with this list, more than any list we've done so far, because this is my favorite Twisted Metal in the series, and I don't want to really do any favoritism here, so I'm going to be as critical as I possibly can. Next is Roadkill. Now, Roadkill is actually one of my go-tos in this game, which I never really thought would be the case because there is so many amazing characters in Twisted Metal Black, just like Twisted Metal 2. They pretty much outdid themselves with the creativity of the car designs and the special weapons and just how fun each character is to play. But when it comes to Roadkill, even looking at his stats, he is pretty much stacked. So his special is rated at an 80%, his speed is rated at 80%, his handling is 80%, and his armor is roughly around 65%. And yeah, I have to agree 100% with these stats. I think he is just a great character down, just not even middle of the road. He's above middle of the road. And he's a character that if nobody's ever played Twisted Metal Black before, I would tell them to choose him first. Mainly because he's just the jack of all trades. He's got a really good special that has a unique feature where if you hold it down long enough, you get a huge power boost on the amount of damage it can withstand. And it's really easy to hit people with. I mean, it's literally just basically a fire missile, but it extends to multiple fire missiles at once if you hold it down longer. And then, of course, his handling and his speed are really, really good, so he can get out of tight situations pretty easily. His really only downfall is his armor, and he's really not that bad. He's pretty middle of the road when it comes to his armor output. So yeah, honestly, I'm going to have to put Roadkill in the S tier just because he is an all-around really great character to choose from. Moving on to Darkseid. This is probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Darkseids in any Twisted Metal. I absolutely love Dollface and their backstory and everything, but once again, we're not going to take that into consideration here. But the design of the vehicle is really cool. It's iconic. I love the vehicle or the police car that's in front or tied to the front of the vehicle. It just looks super badass. The only thing that I have a disappointment with Darkseid or playing as Darkseid in this game is their speed. They feel very slow compared to every other car in the game next to Manslaughter, but we'll get to him later. But in general, Darkseid does feel pretty slow and sluggish with its speed mixed with its handling, and based off their stats, they do have a 70% special, and rightfully so, a 30 to 40% speed, 50% handling, and their biggest achievement is their 90% armor. So yeah, Darkseid is extremely strong in this game, and rightfully so. Their special is literally just a speed boost that lets them ram people, and they do a massive amount of damage with ramming. They are basically what Hammerhead should have been in Twisted Metal 3. And I absolutely love their special weapon in this game. It makes you feel super fast when you use it. It does a ton of damage, and it makes you feel super strong. And of course, their armor to boot makes you feel even stronger. But I am going to have to knock them down a little bit because of their very sluggish speed and handling, but I am going to put them in A tier. Next is the ever so iconic and my personal favorite version of Sweet Tooth. This vehicle, I think they kind of took Twisted Metal 4's Sweet Tooth, which was just insanely overpowered, and they just decided, you know what, screw it, we're going to do the same with our game. And I'm not going to say he's extremely overpowered, because there are some things that knock him down a little bit in terms of his speed and handling. But my god, like, if you choose Sweet Tooth off the bat, you're gonna have a good time through the tournament. You really can't go wrong with him. His special weapon, for some reason the stats is only rated at 70%. I would argue it's a 90% at least, mainly because of how badass it is when he transforms this giant mech, essentially. And it just looks super intimidating coming at you. But he shoots a ton of regular fire missiles. I think it's 20 of them. Could be wrong on that. And if you hit all 20, it does a massive amount of damage, especially if you're going against a character like Mr. Grimm. His speed, however, is only a 40%, and his handling is a 50%, which is pretty accurate. He's not the fastest character, but he also doesn't feel very slow either. I would say he feels more like a 50% in terms of his speed, but however, his handling being at 50% is pretty accurate. Not the most in terms of agility, but his armor is insanely strong. He is rated at an 85% armor, and I have to agree with that. So mixed with an amazing design, an insanely strong special, and a ton of armor, I mean, I have to give him the S tier treatment. I probably would have bumped him down to A tier because of his sluggish speed and handling, but the fact of the iconic design of the vehicle and this fact that it transforms into a mech to use his special weapon, that just has to bump him up to S tier for me. Next is a brand new character to the Twisted Metal series, which is CrazyEight. And they essentially took the design and special weapon from Outlaw in the previous games, which is like ironic because Outlaw is in this game, and we'll actually get to them next. But yeah, CrazyEight has the new taser weapon, essentially, that connects to vehicles within a proximity and does a certain amount of damage depending on how long you stay connected to them. And I absolutely love CrazyEight's character, their vehicle design, and their special weapon. They're a lot of fun to play, but I will say they are a little bit difficult to play if it's your first time playing as them because they don't have that much armor, and their special weapon doesn't do a lot of damage by itself. There's actually like a secret technique you have to learn in order to do more damage. But once you get that down, his special weapon is insanely powerful, and that's why it is rated at a 60% special, and he has 90% speed. He has a roughly 80% handling and 40% armor. So he's kind of like a mix between Specter and Outlaw from the first few games, where he's got a really fast vehicle, not that much armor, but a really strong special. So it's really a risk and reward type situation. But if you can master his special weapon to do that extra amount of damage, the only real downside to him essentially is his armor, because everything else is really damn good. So that's why I'm probably going to bump him up to an A tier category. The only thing not keeping me from putting him in S tier is his lack of armor. Next is Outlaw, and this again is really funny that they went a whole different direction for Outlaw. It almost seems like Outlaw should have been CrazyEight and CrazyEight should have been Outlaw, but suffice to say, I really do love the direction they took here with Outlaw. I love the design of the vehicle. It's more of like a military type vehicle, which in the past, every Outlaw pretty much has been the Crown Vic police car that we've all kind of known and loved, but now they have a giant utility vehicle, and it's badass. And his special weapon no longer is a taser, it's actually a turret that comes out the top and aims at anybody near you, and kind of just does all the work for you. You don't even have to be aiming at anybody, so it's super unique, very cool. And if you learn to tap the special weapon button over and over again, you can actually shoot extra missiles to do extra damage. So In terms of his stats, Outlaw has an 80% special weapon, he has a 50% speed, 50% handling, and a 60% armor. I would have to agree with most of these stats, to be honest, in terms of gameplay. I don't feel like he's that slow for only being at 50%. He does feel a little quicker than that. I would agree his handling is only at 50%, but his armor does feel a little bit better than 60%. I would say he's more of an 80% in terms of his armor. He's a very strong vehicle. He can do a lot of ram damage as well. And again, that really strong special kind of puts him over the top. But I will have to knock him down a few notches because you do have to learn that extra ability to do the extra damage with his special weapon. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky at aiming at the right person, especially if you have multiple people around you. It doesn't necessarily aim at the person who's in front of you, which is kind of a bummer. And his speed and handling aren't the best in the game, so I'm probably going to have to bump Outlaw down to a B tier. And I am going to remind you guys, I know some of these are going to tick off some people, but I'm just trying to be as critical as I can be, because if it were truly up to me, I would put everybody in S tier because I love this game and I love every character for their own merits. There isn't any character in this game that I absolutely despise, so this is difficult for me as well. But I'm trying to put them all into their own category in the sense of being overly critical. And next is Shadow. Again, absolutely love the design of Shadow. I love the character behind them. They are a very unique character this time around as well in terms of their special, because not only do they have their regular ghost missile, which was pretty much brought from Twist Metal 2, which is a shadow that comes out of the front of the vehicle and you detonate it on demand, doing a massive amount of damage if it detonates really close or underneath the vehicle. But they have a secret special where if you tap up on the D-pad 3 times, for some reason, the character comes out of the vehicle on top of it, like through a sunroof, and it becomes a turret just like Outlaw's special, and it does a insane amount of damage. So I don't know why they did that. It's just kind of more of an Easter egg than anything, but it's super cool. So I'm definitely taking that into consideration with their tier here. So their normal special is rated only at a 60%. Their speed is rated at a 60%. Their handling is a 70%, and their armor is a 60%. Stats alone, you kind of look at them and they're just kind of middle of the road. They're not very great, but truthfully, because of that secret special you can do, I'm going to bump their special up to a 75%, mainly because it does a lot more damage that way. But their regular special alone is really strong if you can be very accurate with it, and it does go through walls, which is very helpful. Their speed, I would have to agree, roughly around 60%. They're not super fast, but they're not slow at all either. They have pretty decent handling at 75%, and I have to agree with that. Their handling is really good. And their armor, yeah, I would definitely agree, is roughly around 60%. It's not amazing, but it's not bad in any way, shape, or form. They are, in my opinion, pretty much that middle of the road character, but they're perfect for anybody starting out with Twisted Metal and wanting to get a good character and not have a bad time playing. There's not a huge skill gap required for them. So for this list, I'm gonna have to put Shadow in the B tier ranking. Next is the iconic Mr. Grimm, and this is by far my favorite Mr. Grimm in any Twisted Metal. But both of his backstory and his design of the vehicle, it's super iconic. And looking at his stats, they are insane. He has 100% with his special, 100% speed, 100% handling, and a 20% armor, which makes total sense, right? And this is how Mr. Grimm should be. He's by far the fastest car in the game. He's the best handling vehicle in the game, but he is a risk and reward character. If you're close to any action, you're going to take a lot of damage with his super weak armor, but his special is insanely strong, and it looks super badass too. It's a literal scythe that he throws in front of the vehicle, and just like any Twisted Metal, it only goes straight and you have to be accurate, but if you get a hit, it does a massive amount of damage. And truthfully, because of his amazing special, insane amount of speed, great handling, and iconic design, we gotta put Mr. Grimm in the S tier. Next is Axel, and if you guys have seen my other videos, I did make an entire video on Axel from Twisted Metal 2, and he is personally my favorite version of him in terms of gameplay, but I have to admit, this is my favorite version of Axel in terms of his design. It just looks gruesome all the way through when playing the game versus even seeing the picture here. That giant connector coming down to the back of his head, it just looks super creepy. The fact that his feet are free flowing, so they're grinding on the floor as he's driving around, is just super nerve-wracking. It gives me the chills playing as him. I love his design, and he is a lot of fun to play in Twisted Metal Black. He's very fast, by far the fastest version of him with great handling. Looking at his stats, he has only a 50% special, he has a 40% speed, a 60% handling, and a 60% armor. I would have to agree with most of these stats except for his speed. He feels a lot faster than 40%. I would say he's roughly more about 60 to 70% in his terms of his speed and handling. He's a lot of fun to play. He feels really good. His really only downside is his armor and his special weapon. He's not very strong because, of course, he's open to the elements just like Mr. Grimm, but he does take a lot more hits because of the giant wheels on both sides, protecting him a little bit. But yeah, his special is a lot to be desired, so I'm going to have to bump him down to B tier this time around. Next is Yellow Jacket, and this is his first time returning to Twisted Metal since Twisted Metal 1. It's been a long time. I'm glad to see him back. And he is an amazing character this time around, as well as a ton of crazy backstory to him. Of course, we sadly can't get into that here, but in terms of his design, I love this design of his taxi vehicle here. It's super quick. It feels more like a sports car than a taxi vehicle because it's super quick, it's very agile, and his special weapon is super cool in the sense of having these spikes that come out all around the vehicle. You can have two different versions of this special, just like some of the other characters, where one version is just ramming into vehicles, would do a ton of damage and send the other spikes flying, or you can straight up just shoot the spikes out and they will home in on any vehicle that's in front of you or around you. And they do a regularly amount of damage. It's not an insane amount or anything, but you do more damage if you end up ramming somebody with the special. So kind of something you want to keep in mind. And looking at his stats, he has a 50% for his special, 60% for his speed, 70% for his handling, and 50% for his armor. I would have to agree with most of these stats, except for his speed does feel a little faster than 60%. I would say he feels more like 80% in terms of his speed and handling. But yeah, his armor is a little bit on the weaker side, and his special weapon is, again, hit or miss. Sometimes it's pretty decent if you are to get a good ram on somebody, but you can end up taking damage yourself if you're not too careful. And if you use a special from a far distance, it's not going to do a whole lot of damage, but you can affect multiple people at once if they're all around you, leading for some good crowd control. In terms of his skill level, he is more of a skillful character. He's not going to be very easy right off the bat. So because of that, I'm going to have to knock him down a few notches in terms of his armor not being that great either. But of course, it's the first time coming back. I love to see Yellow Jacket, but I'm going to have to put him in the B tier category. And moving on to Manslaughter. This is his first time in the Twisted Metal series, and his character is just, it's pretty iconic how scary and creepy his character is, just because there's so much unknown knowledge about him and his existence, and it really is cool in terms of his lore and everything. But yeah, his design of the vehicle, however, is kind of lackluster in my opinion compared to all the other vehicles in the entire game. It's just another construction vehicle, just kind of like Mr. Slam or Augur in the previous games, but I do have to say, they did do a pretty unique version of his special weapon. Just like a few other characters in the game, there's two different versions that you can do with his special weapon. One is leaving a trail of rocks behind you that are essentially like landmines. I don't really know how it works, but if you run into them, they explode and do a lot of damage. And vice versa, you can also just chuck the rocks in front of you and do a massive amount of damage if you get most of them to hit the vehicle. It's a little bit hard to actually aim them, but if you do get a direct hit, they do a massive amount of damage. And not only that, he's a very strong vehicle. Looking at his stats alone, he has a 70% special, a 3% speed, a 3% handling, and a 90% armor. I agree 1000% with these stats. He's extremely strong, but he is very slow and sluggish, even more so than like Darkseid. He is by far the slowest and most sluggish vehicle in the game. So in terms of playing as him, I've never been a huge fan, but his special does do a lot of damage. It's pretty unique and it's fun to use. It's just a really big shame that he's so slow and sluggish, so I'm gonna have to put him in the C tier. And next up is Warthog. This is the first time in the Twisted Metal series that he's not a traditional tank, but I absolutely love this design of the vehicle. It's just a regular like Oldsmobile attached to two giant tank wheels. It's such a weird but cool, unique design. I absolutely love it. And the dude behind the wheel is extremely unhinged and very creepy in his own way. But yeah, this time around, he's a lot of fun to play by far, but it's kind of funny that they gave him Thumper's special from the previous games, and sadly Thumper is not here this time around, so that might have been why they did it, but they got rid of his iconic 3-missile design special, and they gave him a flamethrower, but it does do quite a lot of damage. Looking at his special weapon stats, he has a 70% special weapon, He only has a 40% speed, a 40 to 30% amount of handling, and a 90% armor. I don't agree with all these stats, to be honest with you. I think his armor is about 90%. He's a very, very strong vehicle. His special, I agree, is roughly around 70%. It does do a lot of damage, but in Twisted Metal Black, with how fast-paced the game is, it's quite difficult to do essentially a full amount of his special on one character. Yes, you can freeze them, run up to them and turn it on and try to melt them, but their freeze is going to go away pretty instantaneously and they're run away and you won't get it on them at all. It's really difficult to hit some smaller vehicles or very fast vehicles as well, so his special is kind of middle of the road for me. I'm not a huge fan of it just because of the distance isn't very long and it also doesn't last very long either. However, I do think his speed and his handling is actually misguided in his stats. I think he's actually very fast and he's a lot of fun to play. He feels very tight in his controls, in my personal opinion. I don't have any issues at all with his handling. And his armor is insane. He's super powerful. So, in my opinion, his really only downside is his special weapon. So, I'm going to have to put him in the B tier category. Next is Specter. As you guys may or may not know, Specter is my favorite character in all Twisted Metal history. Absolutely always loved the sports car aesthetic with the ghost missile that goes through walls to attack your enemies. And I do think that this is the most powerful special weapon in the Twisted Metal series with Specter in terms of its damage output. However, this is the weakest in terms of its design, the car's design for me personally. I've never been a huge fan of the look of Specter in this game. But that being said, looking at their actual stats, we have only a 40% special weapon, a 90% speed, a 90% handling, and a 30% armor. I agree with most of these stats except for the special. I think the special should be a little higher. I think it's roughly around 70% because not only is it a ghost missile that goes through walls, it's very accurate, it's very hard to actually miss the character, but it does, I think, the most amount of damage in any Twisted Metal that I've seen with the ghost missile. But yeah. Really, the main downside to Specter in this game is their armor, of course, just like any other Twisted Metal. But again, the design isn't nearly as iconic this time around. It's kind of bland, plain Jane, if you will. But yeah, I think this is one of the better Specters in terms of their handling, their speed, and their special weapon. But I'm going to have to lower them down to A tier this time around instead of my normal S tier for Specter, mainly because I'm just not a huge fan of the design of the car overall. Next is Junkyard Dog, another brand new character to the Twisted Metal series, and he's okay. I would understand if he doesn't make a return in the game series ever again, mainly just because he just feels kind of like that character they just kind of slapped together real quick to get an extra name on the roster. He's not that great. He's a tow truck, right? So he's not going to be very fast. He's not going to be very fluid in his handling. He's going to be pretty sluggish. But the thing that's kind of unique about him is his special weapon. It's essentially just one of those fire missiles that you shoot up in the sky and then you have to hit it the right time and it comes crashing down on the character in front of you. That is what his special weapon is. It's just, instead of a gas canister, it's like a spiked ball or a mace, if you think of it that way. And it does do quite a lot of damage if you get a direct hit, but it's kind of difficult to do that sometimes. So the fact that his special weapon basically is a regular weapon that everybody else can use in the game, that's going to knock some points down for me. Looking at his stats alone, he does have a 60% special, he has a 40% speed, a 50% handling, and a 90% armor. Yeah, he's very strong, he's a very strong vehicle, but to be honest with you, most of the vehicles in this game have a lot of armor anyway, so it's not really a huge plus to go with this car over anyone else because of his armor alone. And yeah, his speed is pretty mediocre to slow. His handling is just okay. And then his special weapon, I'm going to have to say, is just okay as well. I don't think he's bad enough nearly to be a trash character, but I will put him in the C category. And last but certainly not least is Minion. We've all come to know and love Minion. He is super scary, and they made his boss battle insanely stressful in Twisted Metal Black. He's the only one of 2 bosses total, and he's the first one you face. He's a lot of fun to go against, but he's also a lot of fun to play as. And looking at his stats, of course, his special weapon is 100%. It does a ton of damage. It's insanely overpowered. Really, the only downside to him is his speed and handling, which are only rated at 30% each. And then his armor, of course, is 100% as well, because he's insanely large. He's a huge vehicle, does a ton of damage, and he can take a lot of damage. So, yeah, we all know what's going to happen here. He's going to be an S tier character. The only person we left out of this list is Warhawk, because the only way you can play as him is through modding the game files, and I'm not going to do that for this video. And he sadly wasn't a full released character. But yeah, this essentially is my full list of my Twisted Metal Black characters. I don't think I'm going to switch up anything. I think everything I have here is the way that I would put it anyway, and this is what my gut feeling is. I know I was pretty harsh on most of these characters. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate in the comments, like, why is this guy not an S tier? Why is this guy not trash? You know, it's just, when it comes to my favorite game in the series, these are all my children. I love all of these pretty much evenly. So even to put some of them in C tier really hurts me a lot. So I would love to put all them in S tier, but I just can't do that for this video. I gotta be as critical as I have been with every other one. So this is my official tier list. Like I said at the beginning, my opinion does not matter. If you don't agree with me, that is totally okay. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Make sure to leave a like, share, support as always, and subscribe so you don't miss my next tier list coming very soon. Have a good one, everybody. Peace out.